Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hello and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. How is everybody doing today? Today I have a really cool guest, author Kelly Sullivan Walden, with her book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, The Art of Transforming the tragic into magic. And Kelly is also a dream expert, so I'm really excited to speak with her, and she's going to join me in just a few minutes. So guys, this is going to be my last show of 2022. We're ending up 2022, and what a year it's been. And today is a special day. It's December 21st, which makes it winter solstice, and it actually begins here at 4:48 Eastern Standard Time, which I am, so it will officially begin as I am on the air. Isn't that cool? And it makes it the first day of winter. I mean, pretty much everywhere except for Florida, South Florida anyway. But so you guys hopefully have a nice winter. Unless you're below the equator, then you're going into summer. I shared something on Facebook earlier today from exploredeeply.com, and I'm just going to share it here again with you. In winter, everything lies dormant in the silent earth. It is a sacred time of rest and reflection before the awakening and the slow build toward brighter days. The energy of winter is that of going within. It's the fruitful darkness and silence out of which our soul's yearnings and new inspirations can eventually emerge. As we consciously link our awareness to nature's cycles, our understanding of our own personal growth cycles begin to deepen. Why do we spend so much time suppressing and hiding our darkness? When negative emotions come up and we feel them, they're inconvenient, uncomfortable, or worse, we make ourselves wrong for feeling them. When we fear our own darkness, we cut ourselves off from an essential source of our own personal power. The key is not in letting darkness overwhelm our lives and our thoughts, but in understanding that the darkness can be one of the greatest catalysts for personal growth and transformation, maybe even our way to enlightenment. And it's also celebrating the 12 days of Yule, which is today, which is a pagan tradition. It's a time of new beginnings, rebirth, transformation, getting rid of unwanted habits and creativity. The symbols of Yule is evergreens, the Yule log, Yule tree, mistletoe, holly, wreaths, and bells. And the colors of Yule are the same colors of Christmas, right? White, green, red, gold, and silver. It's a wonderful time to do a ritual to shift the energy, especially coming into the new year. A burning ritual is a powerful way to let go of things that are no longer needed. I would, on a piece of paper, write down all the things you no longer want or need and thank them for their lessons, but declare that you are letting those things go to create the space for the things that you do want to come into your life. And safely burn them and watch them turn into ashes, knowing that these things have been transformed. Evoke the phoenix energy, as the phoenix often serves as a symbol of renewal and rebirth that cyclically burns to death and is reborn from its own ashes. And for this reason, I am wishing you all a blessed winter solstice and a happy Yule. So to all my regulars who are here with me every week, thank you guys. Love having you here with me. Really, really appreciate it. But for those of you who are listening for the first time and just joining me, I want to say a big welcome and a little bit about me. If you've never heard me before, I am an author and a photographer, and I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And in the book, there are 30 manifesting stories along with photographs that I took of the contributors manifesting postcards. And I include writing exercises, and it helps us get clear on what we want to manifest, and a toolbox full of fun exercises on how to manifest in areas of love and health, money, career, and so much more. So if you're interested in doing these inner work exercises and reading people's incredible journeys of transformation, inspiration, and manifesting, please go and purchase a book. And my publisher, Mango Publishing, is having 30% off on all their books until January 31st. So that's great. Books are a great gift. Of course, also, we're going to be talking about a crisis is a terrible thing to waste today, and that's also a great gift for the holidays. So if you guys are like, what the heck is she talking about? A manifesting postcard, and you want to make one, it's a great time of the year to do it, right? What do we want to bring in 2023? You can find out how to create one and where to send it on postcardstotheuniverse.com. I have a whole, tells you exactly how to create one and where you can send it. And you can join me on my public Facebook group, Postcards of Love, where we share uplifting posts. So each week I usually share a magical message that I post on social media, and it's an image of a manifesting postcard that I like to photograph with an affirmation. And I like to use affirmations daily as I find they're powerful ways to become new beliefs in our lives. And this week's magical message is step up your game. So I thought about that, and it's a good thing to think about. What do I want to step up my game in 2023, right? What do we want to release from 2022? And what do we want to bring in 2023? So things to think about. Okay, I want to get to my guest today. Originally, I mentioned last week that I had somebody else scheduled, but she had to cancel. But I am so lucky that Kelly Sullivan Walden said yes and stepped in. And I believe there's no coincidences. So I know Kelly is the one who is meant to be with me and you guys here today. So here is a little bit about Kelly. Kelly Sullivan Walden is an international best-selling author of 10 books, an award-winning dreams expert, an interfaith minister, a certified clinical hypnotherapist, a practitioner of religious science, an inspirational speaker, and a workshop facilitator. Also known as Dr. Dream, her unique approach to dream therapy led her to become a trusted advisor, coach, and consultant, enriching the lives of thousands of individuals across the globe. Recoveries from heartbreak and misfortune can be debilitating, and in her book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, she divulges both her own larger-than-life misadventures and debilitating losses alongside eye-opening stories from her clients and friends, complete with healthy helpings of wisdom and humor. She flips the script with her 4-step OGLE method and transforms the tragic into magic, a method designed to cut years off the recovery process and help turn suffering into optimism. With this book in hand, you'll find your way back to your inner heaven, even when all hell is breaking loose. Guided by Kelly's wisdom and wit, you too can transform your life's unexpected tragedies and mishaps into magical journeys of self-exploration, love, and badassery. Her career in dream therapy led her to create her podcast, The Kelly Sullivan Walden Show, on mindbodyspirit.fm, as well to found DreamWork Practitioner Training, an online program that teaches people like us to develop dream mastery. So if you want to find out more about Kelly, you can visit her at kellysullivanwalden.com. Welcome, Kelly. Thanks so much for joining me today and stepping in at the last minute. I really appreciate it.
It is my joy and pleasure. Thank you, Melissa, so much for having me, especially on such a day as this, on winter solstice. How cool is that?
I know, right? I know. And it's so crazy that it's actually the time is going to happen when it starts officially while we're on the show. So that's some good energy coming in, right?
No kidding. Oh, God. Yeah.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. So share a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing the work that you're doing today.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, let me see. Where do I start? I was a child a long time ago. Well, I'll do a bit of the overview. So as a dream expert, I like to say I started to pay attention to dreams very early on. A lot of us do as kids. My younger sister and I used to compare notes. We used to have tandem dreaming experiences, which is partly why I remained an enthusiast of dreams even after childhood, because I had somebody to compare notes with, and we had this phenomenon of showing up in each other's dreams and then remembering that we were dreaming in those dreams and having some really intense psychic experiences as a result of that. So that was my sister, and our dreaming together was a big proponent of my spiritual life. And that was the way of it until I was in my early 20s. I went to Hollywood and and became an actress and got my ass handed to me in so many ways. It was the best of times and the worst of times, and it was pre-Me Too. So there was a lot of the Me Too stuff happening, which was devastating and hard. And I actually just last night watched the Harvey Weinstein documentary, or the movie called She Said, and it brought back so much. And so I had a lot of those kind of experiences, not with Harvey Weinstein, but with a lot of other producers, and some that people would know, some people have never heard of, but it was intense. And during that whole period of my life, I really turned myself away from my nighttime dreams and my spirituality, because I was more focused on making my outer dreams come true. And I kind of made the mistake of thinking that I had to throw myself in so deeply into the outer world, and that my inner world didn't matter as much. And because really the inner world doesn't matter, it's not materialized, so I just didn't value it. And I had a quarter-life crisis where I wanted to take myself off the planet. I hit such a deep bottom when I was about 25 years old. I ended up not dying, obviously, because here I am. But I dove headfirst into therapy, into shamanism, into 12 steps, into every spiritual modality I could get my hands on in order to make sense of why I was in so much pain and why I was in such a crisis. And I had a therapist that shared with me that a nightmare is an unfinished dream, and those were the only dreams I was remembering were my nightmares. And that was a life changer for me. The idea that it's an unfinished dream, meaning, and then she went on to say that you can direct your dream to a conclusion that actually is more empowering, and that blew my circuits. In that one moment, I saw, it was like I was on an acid trip, where I just saw how I was a co-creator of everything that had happened, even though I'm not trying to shame myself, even though I did go through that for a bit. But not only was I a co-creator in the trauma and the tragedies, but I could also be a co-creator in them turning around and turning into the kind of dream I wanted. And that began, I went into school to become a hypnotherapist, to learn more about the subconscious mind, the dreaming mind, while I was simultaneously getting my dreams back and learning more about how to alchemize my dreams. And then that kind of led me to start having my own private practice. I stepped out of acting and stepped into helping people as a coach and a therapist, and really found that incredibly rewarding. I started writing, as I've been a avid journaler my whole life, and the journaling kind of led to me writing my first book, which led to another and another, and pretty soon I became known as Dr. Dream with the books I was writing on dreams. And it was like something that I was doing to share with other people, but it was really my own spiritual path. And I think the things that we find for ourselves that work, we got to give them away. We can't keep what we don't give away. So basically, I've written many books, 6 books on dreams, and lots of different journals and oracle decks. And this book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, is one of the first books I've written that really, it contains dreams and dream work, but it's primarily focused on the outer dream, because I believe we're dreaming all the time. not just our nocturnal dreams, but right now we're dreaming, and this happens to be a lovely dream I'm having with you, Melissa, that I wouldn't want to change a thing. But when I realized I could apply the same principles that I've been using for all these years on how to work with dreams, how to interpret them, and how to alchemize them, I could use the same principles with the waking dream. I started to see how, okay, there's a through line here. It's not so segmented. It really overlaps. And as a therapist, some people, would start coming to me because of dream work, but then sometimes they'd come into sessions and they would be having relationship challenges or money challenges or health challenges. But I looked at all of the challenges as if they were all dreams and giving them the same kind of alchemy perspective and suggestions that I would as if it were dreams. And then that kind of led to me creating what I call OGLE, which is really, it sounds like an awful word to nobody was like, oh, yuck, I don't want to ogle anybody. But as a young 20-something-year-old, I was ogled quite a lot by producers and directors, and there's something about turning the tables. Now I'm the ogler, but the ogler of a transformational variety. So one thing, and this will kind of be the grand finale of my little monologue here. I like to say that one way to not transform our difficult circumstances is to not really look at them, to just look at them at face value and then make an assumption. But if we want to transform our tragic into magic, we have to really look at what's going on, look behind the scenes. In other words, to ogle what's going on, to really look. And OGLE happens to make a great acronym for the steps and stages that I like to say is important for how to transform our circumstances into something that really empowers us.
Yes, and we're going to get into what is OGLE and the actual questions and what it stands for. We're definitely going to get into that. And I want to, but even before we delve into that, there's a couple of things. I just want to talk a little bit about dreams and some interpretations of dreams.
Great.
And then we need to get into your nitty-gritty shitty list, because I love that you wrote that. So I see we're at our first break. So let's take our first break here, and we'll come back in just a couple minutes, and we'll get right into it. Stay tuned, guys.
Okay.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The rainbow is God's promise of hope for you and me. And though the clouds hang heavy and the sun we cannot see, we know above the dark clouds that fill the stormy sky, hope's rainbow will come shining through when the clouds have drifted by. Teresa Caprio is the president and founder of Rainbow Guardian Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 serving the intellectually challenged/developmentally disabled, including autism. Teresa started the foundation in 1995 so she could help make a better life for her intellectually challenged daughter. Her dream is that the Rainbow Guardian will provide the necessary tools and education to help the public understand the special needs population, because it's often discarded in mainstream society. To find out more or make a donation in support, please go to www.rainbowguardian.org. Rainbow Guardian's special mission is to see these unique people live a happy, full life and have a future of liberty and equality.
Welcome back. So if you're just joining me, I'm talking with author Kelly Sullivan Walden today, and we're discussing a couple of topics, a little bit about dreams and the significance of dreams, and her book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. So Kelly, before we delve into the book, because I'm reading the book, it was so cool because getting all your stuff last minute, the last couple of days, I've really been delving into the book, and your stories are so fascinating and everything. But a little bit about the dreams. So,
Sure.
All of us dream, every night. Not everybody remembers their dreams, but are there certain dreams, when you say you're a dream expert, are there certain dreams that symbolize something like kind of universally that we should be paying attention to? Like, I don't even know what dream question I really want to ask because dreams are so personal,
Yeah, yes, they are deeply personal and they're universal at the same time. So that's not confusing.
Right.
But so some of the big symbols, I'd say some of the most common symbols, and let's just talk about right now because we're talking about a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. One of the most commonly remembered dreams is being chased. And it doesn't mean that it's the most common dream. It just means it's the most commonly remembered because it's usually frightening. And so over the years, as a dream therapist and dream expert, most people don't come to somebody like me because they're having a bunch of happy dreams. They kind of keep those to themselves. They come to me because they're having a run of difficult dreams or they have a recurring dream that's hard. So I've become an advocate for nightmares because nightmares, just like the crises that happen in our lives, they get our attention. And if we're out of balance, if we're off track, if we're kind of stuck in a pattern that isn't serving us, then something is going to happen. We're going to get a little tap on the shoulder, and if that doesn't get us, then we'll get a little bump on the head. If that doesn't get our attention, that we might have, it might get bigger and bigger until we finally say, okay, clearly the universe is sending me a postcard. The universe wants me to know something.
I love that.
What is the message? Let me tune in and let me really pay attention. So a chasing dream, I always think that everyone, and I borrowed this from Carl Jung, the late great father of psychotherapy. He said to consider that everyone and everything in our dream is an aspect of ourselves. So by definition, if we're being chased by someone, consider that it's a part of ourselves, perhaps a shadow aspect of ourselves that we haven't yet fallen in love with, that we haven't yet celebrated. And it might be the very thing we've been praying for. And it's kind of like the season, right, that we're in right now. For people that are attuned to the traditional Christmas message, Jesus, there was no place for Jesus in the inn. Nobody wanted Jesus. Oh, who are you? We don't need you. You're poor. You're broke. No. We're waiting for the Messiah. The Messiah is going to come with rays of light and with a marching band and get out of here, you. But that's kind of how we treat our shadow dreams. It's like we don't have the eyes to see that they may come bearing great tidings for great awakening. So I think if we don the perspective that everything happening to us in our waking dream and our nighttime dream, even those things that chase us, that we swear are trying to hurt us or kill us. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're trying to give us a life-changing message that will in some way maybe kill our little plans, maybe destroy the dysfunctional pattern we've been in so that we can emerge into the light, which is the reason for winter solstice, is about embracing the darkest moment and celebrating the light that does come, because it was believed years ago, back in the ancient days, that when it was dark, that there may never be the light. This may be, it may just keep getting darker. So the prayers were for the light. And the light always comes. We know that now, but they didn't know it necessarily back then. But these dark dreams, these scary dreams, are trying to get our attention so that we can ultimately transform ourselves into becoming greater light bearers, so that we can recognize, we could say, the Christ presence that's in ourselves that we've been chasing, we've been running from, or we've been trying to get. But it's all ours. So that's one of those universal symbols. And then we could also say the light. If there's anything that is bright light, a sun that's popping out behind a cloud, if there's a great being, even if somebody dreams about a Messiah, dreams about an angel, then that's also, I would say, an aspect of ourselves that might be too good to be true. There's the light shadow that's also anyone or anything we put on a pedestal as if it's too good for us, then we disown that as well. But our dreams, I believe, are trying to give us the sense of integrity, which is about integration with all aspects of ourselves, so we can truly become powerful and a force to be reckoned with, so that we can be a great giver and a great attractor to all those things that we write our postcards to the universe about.
Right. Well, it makes sense when you say that people coming to you, with nightmares, right? And that's a shadow aspect of ourself, that there's a message there that it led you to writing your latest book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. Because nobody would think, oh, a crisis, right? We have a crisis. We don't want the crisis. Nobody wants the crisis. Get the crisis away from me, right?
Yeah.
But you're talking about in the book, you need to look at your crisis. What is it that came into your life? Because it has a message for you. And that's going to segue me to, you shared very openly in the beginning of your book some of the things that you have gone through, and you call it my nitty gritty shitty list. So you want to share a little bit about that? Because I thought that was pretty brave for you to share all of that publicly. I mean, it's not pretty. When we're talking about stuff like this, people, it's not pretty stuff, right?
No. Well, I'll just say a little context before. So I had this past, and I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but when I went into therapy and then became a therapist myself and so desperately wanted people to think well of me and to respect me, and so I heard once that self-esteem comes from doing esteemable acts. So I feel like my life, my self-esteem got built up by living a life that warranted self-esteem. But what I didn't realize until more recently is I also shoved a whole garbage dumpster full of shadow elements of my past away, so that people wouldn't know those things, thinking that it would ruin my career, it might ruin my credibility, until those things started just popping out of the closet unexpectedly like a jack-in-the-box. And I'm like, oh, God, let's get that skeleton back. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. And I finally realized I want to live the life that I want my clients to live. I want people to live a life of peace and freedom where they own that the worst things about them, or that they thought were the worst things, could be actually the best things about them. Because how else are we supposed to learn compassion and empathy and have any depth or any wisdom that's worth sharing unless we've gone through something? So I started to take an inventory of my nitty, shitty, gritty list, the worst things. And I started one at a time, systematically running them through the OGLE practice, the process that I give to other people. And I started to actually, it took a while, it didn't happen overnight, but eventually I found myself actually loving these stories and wanting to share them with people. And then people started like, wow, people were like, oh my God, can I share that with my mom? Can I share that with my sister? Can I share? And I thought, wow, maybe the worst things are the best things. So shall I read the section in the book or just kind of tell people about it? What would you prefer, Michelle? Should I just read it?
You mean Melissa?
Well, I'm sorry, Melissa. There you go. I'll add that to my nitty shitty gritty list.
But wait, it's so funny because anytime somebody says my name wrong, they always use Michelle. It's like never Marie or anything. It's always Michelle. But I just
they call me Carrie sometimes. So we're okay. But you can call me whatever, and I'll definitely call you Melissa. Melissa, like the honeybee. Oh my God.
Like the honeybee. Yeah. Now you won't forget it.
No, I won't forget it. Okay,
you can just read. Well, interesting.
Sure.
Why don't you go down the list because I had a thought when I was reading the list, and I'll share it with you after you share your list.
Okay. So I started off with. Imagine that you're on a date with me. It's a first date. And you lean across the table. We're having a glass of wine. We've got a little candle flickering and a rose on the table. And you say, so tell me a little about yourself. And I say, oh, wow. Okay, well, now that you ask, let me rip out this like long scroll that I call my nitty shitty gritty list. And I've prepared this document for just such an occasion. And you watch spellbound as I unfurl this very long scroll from my purse, clear my throat, and read aloud. While I pursued acting in my 20s, I had over 100 indecent #MeToo-esque propositions. One of those led to me becoming a stripper in a bikini bar for a year. And then I was robbed 5 times, was physically assaulted and nearly raped 4 times, was in 3 car accidents, contemplated suicide twice, was mauled by dogs once, jumped off a 60-foot high cliff and landed ass first in the water, bounced checks, dropped out of college, shoplifted, dabbled in eating disorders, and used to be irresistibly drawn to dysfunctional relationships where I was lied to, manipulated, conned, cheated, rejected, stalked, forced to file restraining orders, was up close and personal with the mafia, and all this has led me to become a commitment phobe with a messianic complex, an insecure, codependent workaholic, in grief over the recent-ish death of over a dozen loved ones, including 2 lifelong best friends, Teresa and Gypsy, and most recently my lapdogs and constant companions, Lola and Priya. But my biggest heartbreak was the death of a baby I was scheduled to adopt. And in the time it took me to read all this to you, wow, I haven't done this out loud, Melissa. In the time it's taken me to read this, I've had one of the 50 hot flashes all experienced today. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'm going to turn the tables on you. I've showed you mine. Now you show me yours.
No, well, it was so interesting when I was reading this because, and this is going to, we'll talk about what OGLE is I was like, there is a lot of you being the victim in this list, right?
Yeah.
You being the victim, which you were. You were robbed 5 times, you were physically assaulted in car accidents, mauled by a dog. I mean, all of this is, right?
Yeah.
And I just gone to an Abraham Hicks thing like 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about, people were arguing for their victimhood. She kept saying, okay, keep arguing for it, right?
Yes.
And so all these things are clicking in my mind, and I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense about your OGLE. So your OGLE are 4 questions, right? So let's just go over them because people are maybe confused. So something happens. Yeah, go ahead. You segue.
Well, let me just say that one of the things I like to say, and this isn't to sound braggadocious, but the things that are like a couple pages later, I talk about the list of things that I wouldn't have done were it not for those things. The nitty shitty gritty list led to me writing all my books and journals and oracle cards, led to me getting my doctoral degree, being invited to speak at the United Nations, starting a nonprofit organization that's inspired inner city kids to dream solutions for the UN's goals, being able to be on national television and featured on radio, like on this program with you, Melissa, meeting and interviewing some of the world's most inspirational people, and being married to an amazing man for the last 20 years. So when I think about my nitty shitty gritty list, if it wasn't for that, I don't even know what kind of life I would have. It might be really
Right.
friggin' boring. So I would say that there's a direct correlation between the best things and the worst things.
Of course.
So, but it takes, there's a study that I quote at the beginning of the book that says that we all know about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but what
Right.
a few of us know about is PTG, which is basically post-traumatic growth. And this is available for all of us, but only like less than half of us actually do this, where we take what's happened to us and we're able to show that there's a direct correlation between the worst thing that happened and this great insight or wisdom or awareness or happening that came on the opposite end of that difficult thing. So there's also another study that says that it takes between 3 to 5 years to recover from a debilitating loss.
I know. I was like, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
I
if
saw
we
what you wrote.
right.
Yeah.
So if we just let time heal, then it's going to take a long time. But if we incorporate some movement toward that difficult thing, then we could transform. Ultimately, I mean, it could take a month, it could take a week, it could take even. I've sat with people who have had major trauma, and in one session they're on the other side of it. And that doesn't mean they don't have to keep going back in and mining more gold, but it's possible to develop the eyes to see our circumstances from a completely different perspective. So is there time for me to get into what OGLE stands for?
Yeah, just say really quick what each sentence is. We'll take our break and then we'll start talking about it in specifics. So go ahead.
So in a nutshell, O is for, what's wrong here? What's offensive? What's the offense? What's hurting you? What's offensive? The G is for what's good about this. And we'll talk more about that. People might think I'm crazy for saying it, but just bear with me. And then the L is for the looking glass, where we see ourselves in the mirror. And that's difficult, but that's where everything starts to transform. And then we get to the E, which is for elevate. With all that we understand, once we get to that stage, we make an action plan for ourselves for how we can take a baby step in the direction of having this make our lives better, becoming a better person as a result of what we've gone through.
Right. OGLE. What's the offense? What's good about the offense? How am I looking at the offense in the mirror? What's reflection of myself? And how will I allow this situation to elevate me? So you guys think about that while we take our next break, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes, and we'll get more into OGLE. Stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes. Co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear.
And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, Creating the Life You Crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. So, Kelly, I want to dive right into OGLE. And there was one story, I mean, there's a lot of stories, but there was one story that I thought, ooh, this really kind of helps me to understand it, the way you're describing it in your book. So,
which one?
The Burning Bougainvillea. When you wrote, the world is a mirror, and Neville Goddard wrote, the world is a mirror, forever reflecting what you are doing within yourself. And I thought, because the dichotomy of the two situations that are happening in that story, you wouldn't, I mean, it would be really difficult to see it. You see what I mean? And so I'll let you share a little bit about that particular story and how that is, and how we can see it as, in your OGLE.
Yeah.
So I'll let you share.
Oh my God. Okay. So the nutshell is I'm in my early 20s. I'm in therapy, just recently out of the drama that I talked about earlier, but I'm in therapy now, and and I'm going for a jog in the park by where I live. And there's these guys that are following me in their car. And they're catcalling, they're whistling, "Hey, baby, you look good in those shorts, hey." And then I hear my mom's voice in my head, "Just ignore them and they'll go away." But they don't go away. Right. "Hey, why are you so stuck up? Hey." And I'm like, "Oh, God, come on." And so I'm having this little argument with God. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm doing everything I can to work on myself. I've gotten out of Hollywood. I'm finally... And it's everywhere. I can't even exercise in a place of safety. So I cut into the park to kind of try to avoid where the cars could drive by. And I noticed them trying to drive their car up on into the park where cars aren't supposed to go. And I'm freaking out. So I'm an adrenalized animal. I'm running as fast as I can, bionic speed. And I finally get to the inside part of the park where I can kind of hide by the trees and get in so they can't see me. And I finally, I can't hear them coming, and I hear this scrape because they had a lowrider. So I'm like, yay, they can't totally get in. But then, oh God, what if they get out on foot and they come looking for me? So I'm kind of stuck as I'm sort of standing by this tree, and I start having a tantrum and a tizzy fit, yelling internally to God, like, why is it so unsafe to be a woman in this world? Right. Why would you put me here? What the WTF, all the expletives. Right. I said, I need a sign, because I don't want to live in this world if it's like this. You need to give me something. I just made a demand, not a postcard, but a demand to the universe. And all of a sudden I turned and saw this bougainvillea, and some pronounce it bougainvillea, I say bougainvillea. It was fuchsia colored, and it was a color, it was fuchsia, that's the closest word I can use to describe it, but it was like it was on fire. It was so bright, so shining. It was like the leaves were dancing, and it was not any bougainvillea bush I had ever seen before. It was like my version of the burning bush, but it was glorious. And there was something about it that took my breath away, and I suddenly stopped thinking about those guys, and I kind of didn't even care anymore about them. Like, come and get me. Fine. Well, here I am. But I kind of put myself, it was like I was being enveloped by this bush, and it was so glorious that it's like it transformed me. And I'm a city girl. I wasn't, now I sort of live in the country. I live in the mountains of Topanga and the Santa Monica Mountains. But that time I had always lived in the city and never much appreciated nature. But this was a communion with something above and beyond me. And it filled me up with so much love and so much peace that I didn't ever want to leave that spot. But it started to get dark, and I knew it wasn't safe for me to stay in the park after dark. It was barely safe enough to be there while there was still light. So I reluctantly left, but before I left, I pulled off a piece of the branch of this bush because I wanted a souvenir. I wanted something to remember. And by the way, I had run through this park maybe, I don't know, 100 more times, and I had never seen this bush before. So I had not seen it. It had never, maybe I had, but I just didn't have the eyes, or maybe it was just there for me for that moment. I don't know. But I pulled off a sprig to take with me so I could remember this feeling even when I got home. And I started kind of jog walking home, and then all of a sudden I got stopped in my tracks, and I heard this voice in my head that said, "Kelly, you are just like them." Meaning I'm just like those men. Right. And the rest of the download was they saw something that they considered beautiful, and they wanted a piece of it. And maybe they weren't feeling beautiful themselves, so they wanted something external to them to give them some kind of a access to their own beauty. And I did the same thing. I was feeling empty, and I saw something beautiful, and I took a piece of it. I didn't ask permission. I just took it because I needed it. And I thought, oh, my God, we are the same. And that, strangely, it might at first seem like, well, that's a bad thing to think about, but it was like a bitter pill to swallow. It actually made me feel more peaceful because I realized I'm not separate from them. All of a sudden, I felt safer, feeling my communion and oneness, not just with the bush, but with these men. And I was flooded, so I did my own. So I'll just say that was like a moment of reckoning. That was a transformational moment. And I started to see all the men from all my pre-Me Too moments in Hollywood. I got to see that we were all the same. We're all wanting. They were grabbing something from me. I was trying to grab something from them. It was like we're the same. So this revelation was life-changing. So cut to a few years later. My life had been it took on a different, this hadn't happened again. It didn't happen anymore. It was like the sign on my back that said, "Come after me." It was taken off. And so here I am. I'm driving home from a party, and this is before the days of GPS on the phone, and my directions were all scrambled up. I end up in the bowels of Los Angeles, where a girl should never be in the middle of the night. It's like gangbang territory. It's like just awful. And all of a sudden, not only can I not find my way back to the on-ramp to the freeway, but my car breaks down. There's steam rising from my hood, and I'm like, what in the hell? So I pull into a gas station. I pull into this little corner where there's like where you can get water and air for your tires, and I'm completely in a corner, and all of a sudden, two guys, not dissimilar to the guys that years before had been catcalling me, but there's two kind of gangbanger guys walking toward me with that swagger that I had known in the past to be incredibly dangerous. And so something came, they got closer to me, and all of a sudden this behavior came over me that I didn't expect, and I don't think they expected, but I moved toward them, and I said, "Oh my God, thank God you're here." And I said, "Oh my God, you're my angels. Do you guys know how to fix a car? My car's overheating." And their faces changed from menacing to helpful in that moment. And they got under my hood. They got water in it. They totally fixed my car. And and they gave me directions to get back on the car. And one of the guys, I said, "What's your names?" "I'm Kelly." And one guy said his name was Angel, and the other guy said he was Miguel. I'm like, "Oh, really, angels? Like you're Angel and you're Archangel Michael. Oh my God, thank you so much." And I literally hugged them. I told them I grew up with all sisters. I never had brothers. They're like my brothers from another mother. They laughed and they were like, "Hey, this is a really dangerous area. You should be careful. Don't come down here in the middle of that." I'm like, "Okay, guys, thank you so much." I went on my merry way, got on the freeway, and I realized, holy crap, what, like, had I not had that Bougainvillea experience before, I might have been dead. Because I don't know, but I imagine that their intent wasn't to help me. It's just not the nature. So here's how I ogled what happened.
Yeah.
The O stands for what's offensive. What's offensive is being objectified, and being being sexualized, and feeling like the world is full of predators and it's a not safe place to be, and feeling like it's not safe to be in my own skin. What's good about this whole thing that happened to me is that first of all, I didn't die. So anytime we don't die, we get a chance to do it over again. Exactly. And I got to learn something new. I got to figure out some survival mechanisms. I got to learn, and I got to become wiser. And I'll just skip right to the L. The L is for the looking glass, which is also what's good about it, because I got to see that we're in a hologram. We are all the same. We might look different. We might come from different walk of life. We might be different ages, different races, different creeds. We might come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, but we are the same. We are all, when we forget who we are, we reach for something external to us that always equals a bad idea, because it keeps us feeding that cycle of poverty. And when we wake up, we all are the same. We're angels. Those guys were angels for me. And and realizing that I am at one with them made me feel safer. Now, I am not one to simplify rape or threat.
No, I know.
I don't want to simplify it, but there's something.
Well, that's why this story was so powerful, because, and like you said, you the Bougainvillea, and you took something that wasn't yours to take. Right? Yeah. So even though you did it in a minute way with a tree, but how do we know how minute that was? When the men are assaulting, they're taking something that is not theirs to take because they're feeling that they need something, right? So it's like so different on the spectrum of what we imagine, like how we can do a comparison of the two. But if you really understand that everything is a mirror of what is going on inside of you, and if you always felt like a victim in where you were in Hollywood, of course examples of victimhood would keep showing up for you.
Yes. Oh my God. And it's almost just it's just the hardest thing to wrap our heads around.
It really is. It's not easy.
No, but it is the thing, I believe, that changes everything when we at least look for, how am I like them?
Right.
Even if it's just a speck. And it means that we have to, it's kind of like we have to put our ego aside, because our ego just wants to say, oh my God, I would never do that. I am not like that in a million lifetimes. I have never. But the truth is, that's bull. We are, everyone and everything is within us, even if it's just a speck. And
how many times do we assault ourselves?
Oh, thank you. Exactly.
We assault ourselves all the time. So
every day.
When we're assaulted outside of ourselves, we would say, I would never do that. Well, maybe not to somebody else, but you're doing it to yourself all the time.
Exactly. So the E for elevate is, how will I move forward? How will I go forward and do things differently? And so this was ultimately to just remember that we are at one. And I remembered the words of this, it was Justin Sterling who led a workshop, a women's weekend, years ago, and he said, basically, and a lot of women wanted to kill him when he said this, and I wanted to kill him when I heard it, but I kind of believe it. This is my experience, that men will behave they will be either valiant or violent. based on how we frame them and hold them and see them. So knock on wood, because I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule. I don't know everything.
And this is not blaming women. This is not, see, people have to understand that. You're not saying it's a woman's fault. That's not what you're saying. It's
but what
it's just a reflection of what's an internal inside
Right.
of you.
But there is something, I mean, I even remember reading years later about the woman who's the peace pilgrim, and how she was in a car with a guy who picked her up. She was hitchhiking, and she knew for a fact he wanted to either rape her or kill her or both. And she reclined her seat and just said, "I'm really tired. I'm going to take a nap." So instead of fighting with him, "Let me out of the car," she was she laid in an even more vulnerable position. And while she was laying down, she didn't take a nap, but she went into prayer. And she was praying to see and to love that part of herself that this guy represented. And
it's deep work. It's deep work, Kelly.
He ends up, and he ends up coming. She wakes up, and he has changed. His whole facial demeanor has changed. He ends up becoming her champion for years. He ends up following her, being like her bodyguard. It's like he admitted that, he didn't have good intent, but he changed being around her because of the way she held him. So it's just to consider that let's just do the part that is in our lane to do. And that's to do the best we can to look at life from the perspective that Einstein says that either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. Like, what if everything is happening to us, for us, not to us? So that's it. That's my. And
there's
now,
so much more. We have 30 seconds left.
Oh my God! Next time you see a bougainvillea, remember.
I will. But there's so many stories like that, but I wanted to point out one story so people could really grasp what we're talking about. And Kelly, I have to have you back. Thank you so much, Kelly Sullivan Walden. Thank you. Check her out at kellysullivanwalden.com. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. Wishing everyone a happy holiday season and a wonderful and prosperous new year filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.